Prenuptial agreements, aka prenups, are a contract between parties to determine how to end their marriage. However, the beauty of a prenup is it's done before the parties get married. What happens when you fill out a prenup? You go see a trusted advisor, an attorney, and you bring all your asset information with you. A document will be drafted, and that document will have the following in it: all of the assets and debts that the parties are bringing into the relationship at the time of marriage. It will also have a valuation of those assets. The parties can then decide whether or not they agree with the valuation of those assets because they've been disclosed. If you have a prenup, all assets have to be disclosed for it to be a valid prenup. If not, the prenup can be set aside. What happens when the prenup is signed is that the prenup becomes a contract between the parties, and that enables the parties, if they separate, to know what the separation will be. When the prenup is filed with the court during a divorce, that's what the judge decides is the allocation of the assets and debts between the parties. The way you enforce a prenup is that you file it with the court and you ask for it to be enforced. Typically, this is called a motion to enforce, a settlement agreement. The prenup is the settlement agreement because it was done before the relationship started. If the judge decides to enforce a prenup, then that will actually be the resolution of the divorce between the parties. The way a prenup can be contested is if the parties are able to show, one, that all the assets were not disclosed, or two, that the assets that were disclosed were not properly valued. What it means is that if one party has taken advantage of another party by not disclosing the assets at all or undervaluing the assets, a judge can make a determination to set the prenup aside. If a judge decides to set the prenup aside, then what happens is that a regular divorce proceeding would happen. What that means is that all of the assets of the parties in the marriage would be subject to equitable division. If a prenup was valid, then those assets would not be subject to equitable division. What is a postnuptial or a postnup? A postnup is a contract that the parties come up with during the marriage about how they want to end the marriage. However, postnups can be tricky. The reason why is because there's certain things that cannot be settled between parties in a postnup. One thing is child support. Child support has to be determined by a court. What a postnup can decide is asset allocation between the parties. If that is done, then that will be enforceable by a judge if it's brought before the court. When constructing a postnup, it needs to be understood what the assets are that the parties are separating and how they're going to be separated. What cannot be done is determinations of custody or child support. Those matters have to be decided by a judge. They cannot be decided by a postnup. Because a postnup in actuality is just a contract that the parties agree to how they're going to separate up assets after they're divorced. That can involve property. That can involve 401ks. It can involve frequent flyer miles. We've had clients that have argued over animals in postnups. We've had clients that have argued over settlements of personal injury cases in postnups. We've had clients which have argued many different things to put in a postnup and want to have them valid. Postnuptials can be difficult to enforce. So it's best to work with a trusted advisor to make sure that the postnup is legal and will be binding when it's presented to the court. Because certain things can't be decided in a postnup, such as child support, child custody, etc. Those are not postnuptial issues. So if they're written in a postnup, the postnup will not be valid. If you have any questions about prenups or postnups, don't hesitate to give us a call. We're here for you when you need us.